Oh boy, oh boy.
Yep, we here.
We here.
We're gonna wait a few more minutes to let folks filter in, but
Yep.
we're almost here.
Oh, a round just ended. That is beautiful timing. Holy shit, it's Greg.
Nuh-uh. Yaha!
Yeah.
Thank you, Rosie.
What a...
What does it say that half the attendants here are staff?
It shows that the staff are very attentive, which is good.
We the rats.
We are not the rats. The Rat King was. The Rat King was a
The
roof,
Rat King
remember?
was 1984. Sorry, y'all. That happened last month. Whatever.
Yeah, yes, it did. Question 1: is the Rat King coming back? Answer 1: no.
I miss Rat. You know, honestly, like, even though it was a unanimous decision that the Rat King was just not working for us, at the same time, it's like, but the Rat King iconic though. Like that's
Rat King,
sigh.
Rat King iconic. Rat King bad.
Someone might have spawned it. We just had April Fools last week, so.
No, no, Rosie, you will not. Unfortunately, that will be a dream state forever. I'm afraid. Unless, of course, you know, you completely rework Glacier and the Rat King yourself. Oh, Greg says it'll happen even if he has to die for it. You heard it here, everybody. Everyone's here as a witness. All we have to do is kill Greg. Everyone here is a witness.
It's been going on for approximately 10 seconds, Phil. You just got in time.
Wow, Phil delay on time. Remarkable.
Right? Yeah, I was kind of hoping it would look like that, Noel. I'm caught off guard that it hasn't. Normally, when we've had these server meetings, I'll jump in and there'll be like 300 people sitting in the audience. Or like 20. All right. This is probably half of the folks we're going to see in total. I know folks are still trickling in here, but time is 4, and it is 4. So, I'm gonna push it over to Fox to start with our first topic here, which is the Perry whitelist.
Yes, the Periapsis whitelist, a source of contention for most, and well, it wasn't a source of joy for anybody. Periapsis whitelist, it's gone, it's out of here, and it's probably never coming back. No one liked it. Not, the reasons for its implementation are long and complicated, but all that matters now is it's gone, it's out of here. Periapsis will not be whitelisted. Pretty much all there was on that. Just the announcement. Periapsis players rejoice. Moving on. Good news. As I'm sure some of you have already been the recipient of these, but we are giving. I don't want to use giving out, but more.
We're pushing harder for.
We're pushing harder for giving people plus rep notes, good notes on your accounts, little stickers if you want to call them. If you're doing like, you can help us and say, hey, John Chef did fantastic chef roleplay and made everyone in service happy today. Great, cool. Please, if someone is going above and beyond what is generally expected of their job or the game in general, please don't be afraid to help us or add us and say, hey, yeah, this guy did really good and made everyone in the department happy. Because we will be happy to grant them a note saying so, or if we observe people doing, like, if you're a syndicate agent and you do really good role play with, say, a hostage situation, fantastic, cool, we love to see it. Good role play, and good role play will be rewarded with us formally recognizing that in the form of a note. If you've or if you're making the round a better place for people to be in, congratulations, you're probably going to get a plus rep note.
Yeah. So next up is Antags. Some of you are gonna feel 1984. Some of you are gonna say, "Thank fucking God." So we ran a poll in the admin team last week, and it was an overwhelming supermajority. It was like 80% of the admin team was in agreement here. Not only is it our current rules, but we double checked that that's actually what we want as our current rules. Antag damage has to be proportional to your objectives, and you have to be targeting your objectives. Being a Cindy is not a license to blow up random shit. Your job is not to cause chaos. Your job is not to cause random distractions. Your job is not to just antagonize literally everyone on the station. If you're going to create a syndicate bomb and place it in the middle of service, and your answer to the question why is because I'm a Cindy, you're probably going to get some sort of note for that. That said, you can totally help and be like, my objectives suck. Can I get some alternate objectives? Or you can say, I have this idea that I want to do, but it's not actually related to my objectives. Can I do this? Like, that's the kind of stuff that you should totally be helping for. Like, it's okay to do that. I had a skeleton row come up and like have a whole conversation with me in AHelps trying to figure out what a really cool event they could do is. I had another Cindy who completed their objectives. This is like, I don't want to be done being a Cindy, but I'm green texting right now. And I'm like, all right, here's 2 more objectives for you to do, right? That's the way we've been doing things so far. To that end, however, there's been a change in what we define as excessive damage. So internally, we talked about, like, what is too much. Previously, we were like, and power is off limits was kind of the de facto rules, because really the only way to sabotage power was to fuck with the AME, and the only real way to fuck with the AME was to make it completely unusable, and then the station is probably just going to go into a power loss imposed death spiral. But that's not the case anymore, because we have multiple power sources on every single map. Submarine has a Singulo and a TEG. Most maps have an AME and either the TEG or the Singulo. It's actually our mapping standard right now that every map have 2 major power sources, and that's to say nothing of things like solars and the plasma power generators and so on. So we've changed our definitions here, which means that Antags can fuck with power. They can go steal all the AME fuel away from the AME. They can cut the wires. They can put a C4 on the outside of the burn chamber. They can even like fuck with the Singulo as long as what they're doing isn't Singulose. Like, you can sabotage the singularity generator such that the singularity runs out and just decays, and then the station has to go find a whole new singularity generation tool. And so, like, we want Antags to have that option. And you can do, like, I need to cut the lights so that I can get into the office, or so that SEC is busy maintaining their security while I go, murder this person out in Maine. So you can justify cutting the lights out, like, with just, it's a distraction for this specific objective that I'm about to go do, right? I couldn't find insoles and I really need to hack into this office. Cutting the lights makes that easier. On that note, we're going to move on to power gaming. Fox?
Yes, power gaming. Power gaming is a very complicated issue that we as administrators haven't fully fleshed out a consensus on what power gaming like as a whole is and what power gaming and what we should do. But that generally, and unless the policy is clear and says this is power gaming, there will be erring towards the side of leniency. But we did reach a consensus that a head of staff bolting their office on a code green is power gaming. You can bolt your bedroom, that's your room. But if you're the head of personnel and you're shutting down your office even while you're sat in it, or even if you're leaving on a code green, that is power gaming. You shouldn't be doing that. In universe, it'll be you could consider it a fire hazard. You could consider you consider it who knows how many space ocean violations. But we have agreed that locking your office is power gaming, but you can lock your head of staff bedroom if you feel like it. On quick side thing on that is if your locker is in your office, this is not a token for you to take your locker, shove it in your bedroom, and say, "Oh, but I'm allowed to lock my bedroom." If it's in the office, it's in the office. Alright, security relating barricades and security maintenance start. I'd probably classify that the same. Security, it's not really something security should be doing. We generally agree that power gaming is defined as you are preparing for a scenario which hasn't happened yet. In universe, you're the 99%. If the locker spawns in the bedroom, then that's fair game. In universe, 99.9% of the shifts that you as a character will have done will have been perfectly normal shifts. The shift that you're playing is generally accepted to be the shift that has gone wrong. So you don't need to be preparing for the worst and going, "Oh, but what if there's syndicate agents on board?" Well, how would your character know that? How would you, the character, establish that there is going to be a threat? You, the player, knows because this is the video game that you're playing. But you, your character is not you, the player. It's separate feelings, separate experiences. Says that in the rules. So is like taking the R&D server and stuffing it in behind like 5 doors, or taking your captain's locker and stuffing it in the vault. Would you realistically be doing that at the start of a shift? No, not really.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that, the broader strokes purpose of power gaming is like you shouldn't be at round start or as a habit every single shift or just because it came up in conversation or whatever, running around and wrenching up the server and shoving it in your office, grabbing your lethals on green and all that. You should be imagining that your character has experienced 99% green shifts for their entire career. This is the 1 in a million shift where you encountered a Cindy. This is the first time you've encountered a Cindy, is basically the vibes here. Every single shift. I know we as players know that Cindy's are common. Every single round there's Cindy's or something. There's ninjas, there's nukies, there's slimes. But your character has not had those experiences. Now, your character may well be a grizzled veteran who's seen Cindy's before and has all sorts of experiences with them in roleplay. But in terms of your mechanical decision making, you should not be acting as if you're just used to this shit, like it happens all the time, right? Um, so the other note here is a lot of people will argue, well, I need tools to like do my job. Like the paramedic needs to be able to get through this door, or SEC needs to be able to get through this door. That's NG's job. Call an engineer to do the engineer's job, right? So if you need through this door urgently and you go looking for tools, that's fine, but it's not a just in case type of thing. If you say, I'm a sec-off who might need to get through a door eventually, and that's why I got these tools, that's paragaming. If you're saying, I couldn't find an engineer and I can see a corpse right there behind the window, I need to get to them, they're currently in crit, that is not paragaming. That is a paramedic doing their job. That is a paramedic taking emergency measures to do life-saving care, right? But not at green when there's no problem, right? You need to have a current, right in front of you threat. So next up is silicons. We had a little controversy about what is crew, so we talked about that last meeting.
So what is defined as crew for now, as we stand and speak, because right now Silicon, cyborgs cannot access the crew manifest. For now, if they have a job marker next to their head on the hood, as you can see, as all cyborgs now have, they are defined as crew. However, you as a cyborg are an intelligent, thinking being. Just because the CMO is using their PDA to scan someone, their job icon's not there for a split second, that doesn't automatically make them not crew and you can beat them with a wrench. No, you employ some common sense is what we're saying until we can access manifest and all that. But for now, as long as they have a job icon next to their head, they are legally crew.
Yeah, and that was contrary to what I had originally said in some places in Help, for instance, because we talked about that last meeting, and basically the argument was made is like, but like physically, how does a Borg actually tell? And the answer was, shit. You're right. You know, so that is the current ruling. It'll be different in the future. We're planning on implementing the crew manifest as a Borg uh, a Borg skilled a Borg action that they can use. They can open up the manifest and check who's on the crew manifest, and that would be either crew or ID. That's the long term goal. Um, so metagaming, someone suggested that we consider the idea of like a list of officially known contraband from Syndicate. What are things that security knows about and understands how they work? And we kind of just decided as a team that this is a little bit too much for MRP. But metagaming is still a thing, right? Like there's still such a thing as knowing too much about what the antags are up to. So you can totally know all about emags. You can recognize the sound of an emag and understand the implications of an emags being used and all so on, even if you're Joe Greytider. Like nobody's gonna throw a fit about that. However, if a ninja appears and suddenly you're really paranoid about the server, my question to you is how does your character understand the specific target of a super secret organization you've never heard of before? Right? You have no idea what Spider Clan is. You don't know what this weird man in the funny black suit is up to. You have no idea he's going for the server. All you know is he has camouflage armor. All you know is that he's a badass at martial arts because you watched him solo a Sekov with Krav Maga. What you don't know is what his specific objectives are. What you also don't know is syndicate targets. So, like, you can understand that the captain's nuke disk is a high security item and that you should probably protect it. What you don't know is that syndicates want the CE's boots. Syndicates want the hypo spray. You don't know that as a character. So you need to be careful and make sure that you're taking mechanical action. Your decisions in the game are consistent with that. And this is just to minimize people being paranoid. Paranoid game behavior is a very it's a more LRP style way of playing the game where you're more focused on winning. In MRP, it's less about winning and more about actually presenting this like hidden role game. And your role's not really hidden if the second you use an EMAG, everyone calls Cindy on comms, and then everyone starts guarding their pockets, and it's like you don't even know what the Cindy's here for. You have no idea what their objectives are. So, conversely, however, I feel like I shouldn't have to say this because a lot of folks do know this already, but I want to make sure it's said because I keep running into it on like an every week basis. Being a syndicate is not a crime. If you are throwing a syndicate in perma simply because you know they're a syndicate, you are breaking the rules and you're going to get roll banned from SEC. Straight up. In order to punish a syndicate, you actually have to find the specific crimes they did. They broke into this area. They murdered this person. They stole this item. And those are the crimes. And that could absolutely put them in perma. But if you know 100% they're a Cindy and, like, their sentence is 5 minutes, sorry, You have to let them go. That's part of the game. The syndicates not getting caught doing the real crimes that get them put in perma is part of the gameplay. It's part of the fun for antags. And if you simply throw them in perma because you saw them use an EMAG, that's violating the sandbox that we've tried to create here. Next up, EORG.
Yes, end of round grief, EORG, EROG, however you want to call it. We are not going to ban you for EORG anymore. You know, no more 2-hour bans, no more whatever. However, the pacifism is not being removed. And if you are, say, you've got your stun baton at end of round, and you're going to start whacking a bunch of people and throwing it, or smashing the glass at central, be prepared to get Tyler 1 scream erased, turned into a piece of bread, turned into ash, given cat ears, thrown into space. Basically, you reap what you sow. If EORG is no longer being punished with a ban, it's being punished by admin EORG, if you want to put it in a funny way. This doesn't mean that you can start preparing. You can start preparing for EORG by bringing a kind of freeze on or trip or hoarding a bunch of weapons just for end of round. Don't do that. We're going to assume your target is the shuttle. You will likely, get you'll likely get a boink, a punishment, a talking to. So don't prepare for the end of round mayhem, but also don't worry about getting banned for it either.
Cool.
So essentially, you can do minor EORG within the bounds of pacifism, but it's not going to go unpunished. You might still be erased for those last 30 seconds before the lobby screen.
Yeah. And Corinto brings up a good point. This was always true, but to emphasize, the point at which it becomes allowed to ERDM is when the pop-up shows up with the green text. Until then, you are still playing the game, right? And at that point, you're still subject to escalation guidelines and all that. Until the shuttle docks with CENTCOM and you get that pop-up, the game is still playing. So the last thing before our Q&A is events. Our previous policies on events were quite restrictive, and so as a consequence, a lot of admins just didn't do them anymore. We talked as a team and kind of decided to loosen them up a little bit. This means that you're going to see more events again. We do still have guidelines on what those events are. So if there's like a lot of like, you guys should be helping if you see like ridiculous events that are fucking with the whole round and ruining everyone's time. And yes, I understand that help is then visible to the admin who's probably doing it, but it's also visible to literally everyone else. So like that is your immediate way to say, hey, is this actually a thing admins should be doing? One of the things specifically that we talked about is ERT. A lot of people want ERT. Some of the admins wanted ERT. There were some old school admins who were very anti ERT. And certainly there's complaints that, for instance, the way that Wisden uses it has caused it to be kind of cheapened and not particularly interesting. So one of the things that we've thought about implementing is you guys can call ERT. And what happens when you call ERT is the present admin, if there's an admin present, can decide whether or not to answer. And if they do, the policy will be that they put those ERT folks on the evac shuttle. So calling ERT is the same thing as calling evac. We just add some staff to the shuttle to help you guys out. And that can be a bit of roleplay. But it also means that it's just evac plus. Yes, that's the idea. And the point of that is it's self-moderating. It means people don't call ERT frivolously because they're ending the round. It means ERT has a minimal effect on the round because it's end of round. And it also means that in the event that like the ERT guy gets gibbed and his shit is stolen, it's only gonna matter for like 10 minutes. Like the shift is over. The shuttle has docked with the station. The round is over, right? So if you guys get like zombies and you call ERT, then we're gonna put Seaburn on that shuttle or something of that caliber. But what we probably aren't gonna do, at least as a typical thing, right? We might do events, but like as a typical thing, what we probably aren't going to do is sending a custom shuttle with ERT on that shuttle. and then having the round continue for another hour with ERT on the station. We're probably not going to do that so much. And there are other kinds of events that folks might try out. I know we've been looking into doing admin created fugitives. There was someone who was doing, gosh, what was the event that one of the admins was running just last week? That was, I don't remember. Oh well. That being said, A helps is not the place to request events. If you do this, we will just ignore you. It is a waste of our attention span because A helps are supposed to be for I need to ban someone, or I need to like give someone a plus rep, or I need to be aware of something, or I'm telling you that I'm SSDing. That's what A helps are for. A helps are not a favors pinata. This is not the place to request items. This is plus rep is something we talked about earlier. It's notes that are basically just giving you a note for really good roleplay or something like that. But yeah, so don't use A helps to request events or ghost rolls or any of that shit. And there was a specific thing that I've come across rather recently. Make sure when you're interacting with an event, suppose you're a sec-off, you know who you are, who is just doing your job, and a shadow anomaly appears in sec, and it turns out that it's sentient. You want to roleplay with the sentient anomaly. That's valid. That's cool. That's part of why it's sentient, right? But if there's a guy banging on the window calling for your help, and you're too busy fucking around with the shadow anomaly to do your job, you need to go do your job. Right? You are a sec-off or a command member or an engineer or whatever. Your job is to the station first. And so you shouldn't be ignoring that to go roleplay with the funny sentient machine, right? But other than that, I think we are ready for Q&A. So I'm going to open up, I think I already did open up invitations actually. Yeah, here it is now. So y'all can start lining up and we'll get y'all each a turn to talk. There's like a hands button down the bottom of the screen or something like that. There we go. All right, let's start with Ray.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Howdy.
I wanted to ask something real quick. So just recently, I decided to make some form of security RP group, and it would be interesting to see other people do similar things for other departments. The organization of it is a little bit complicated, but I think it could be a great way to create more coordinated groups for certain roles.
Yeah. Alex, is this something you wanna field?
I've actually got a few questions. Yeah. By a security roleplay group, I'm guessing you mean like a group of people on the Discord?
Yes, I actually contacted you in DMs about it.
Oh, you did? Hold on a second. I get a lot of DMs nowadays. Yes,
Ray,
there it is.
are you
From 21 hours ago.
What's
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think my only thing would. Let's see.
The organization of the group will not be admin dependent for spawned items. Like if we wanted to do a training, we'll grab passenger role. If we are a big group, we'll go to a sandbox. And when we're in security, we would maybe ask the captain if there's good RP with the captains going on. We'll tell them, hey, you want to do some fun event like what Hyperion GM suggested for the Gorlax Marauders. This kind of group could be made to make some fun events for security or crew members, all player driven.
I'll admit, I kind of like that. I do kind of like the idea of it. I like that fact that's in forum discussions as well. I was initially kind of worried that was going to be some separate Discord server. This is going to be something that requires a lot of thought to really get behind all the implications of.
This was just a suggestion, as in to encourage people to make something like that.
Yeah, I'll say this: if you want to continue this, you have no qualms for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna be trying this out, to be honest. If there's any people who like doing security RP and want to be more strategic, more organized, go ahead. It's informed discussions, but there is an extremely, extremely important question. And I believe this type of question can genuinely change a lot about what could happen in Delta V.
Right.
The thing with the whitelisted roles, the command members, all that kind of stuff. Oh God, there's a cadet robbing my security weapon. Currently, I've noticed a lot of the command under whitelist have not been using their full capabilities to prevent not only rule breakings, but allow for much more unique situations. I'll start with, for example, rule breakings. Yesterday, and before actually 2 days ago and 3 days ago, the Nuki crew and I tried to do some unique roleplay situations. We had 3 days ago, Nukis went in as Central Command, and 2 days ago we went in as investors. Most of the time, people ignored Captain's orders, especially Ramona repeatedly saying to, hey, crew members, please leave the area, etc., etc. Now, where does this come in for the other roles? I have an actual screenshot for what could be suggested for this type of situation. Here, I'll post it in the chat. This is just a general idea. So the head of security, to be honest, can do a lot of work to improve the roleplay in the station, alongside with the head of personnel. 1 second. All right, so
Okay, yeah.
So the head of security can really organize a lot in the station. Same with, for example, the head of personnel. Many times, if I'm not doing something like ANTAG or doing something very specific, like there's an actual objective, I'm just a mindless passenger. It would be really nice to see head of personnel actually not sitting in their office and doing events. A head of personnel should be doing an event every round, to be honest. And I think the best way to improve the whitelisted roles is to inform whitelisted members on how they should act and how they should improve of their role play. They should constantly ask people for suggestions, and that whenever they're about to get what? Make that shit whitelist.
Well, so what Nola's saying is that whitelisting applies only to captain, head of security, and the Nuki commander at this time. It used to be it was all of command, but
And warden.
oh, and warden now, right? That was a new change. Good catch.
Yeah. So generally, I think with these three roles, they definitely can change a lot of things within the station. I've had actually within my first 2-3 rounds after I started playing security again, the head of security got fired. In a row, 2 rounds in a row, 2 different head of securities got fired, and I was the acting head of security. So here's where, for example, when whitelisting members, what could you tell to a whitelist when you want to inform them of how they should act? One suggestion for a head of security would be to make a briefing at round start. Tell the security officers, listen guys, we're here to roleplay. Make sure that you guys speak with the people you're arresting. Don't stun baton them instantly. I will fire you if I see you do that. And if you guys are on code green, there's no syndicate action, there's nothing going on. Either go and interact with the people on the station, or let's do a training. You get what I mean? Stuff like that generally to improve roleplay overall. And I think if we start seeing these kinds of good roleplays where people often create interesting situations, this thing can possibly introduce the extended rounds again, even though I hate that to the bottom of my heart. If the role plays to that extent, I think extended rounds, or what's it called, survival rounds, might make more sense without Cindy's.
Yeah, I agree that our current roleplay standards are quite diverse. Not standards. Our current roleplay culture is quite diverse. We have a lot of players who are just straight up HRP, and we have a lot of players who are on the lighter end of MRP, and that's okay. But it does mean that extended rounds can be boring because 50% of the crew isn't really interested in sitting down and having a conversation with your character about their backstory, right? And I think I see what you're saying is like the people who are getting whitelisted. One of the things that we use as a whitelisting requirement is we are expecting a higher role playing standard from you, even higher than we already expect from Second Command in general, right? And so if we have them to that like second degree heightened expectations of role play, at this point we're kind of asking them to be stewards of the community, to kind of represent the best of the best in terms of the style of role play. Like it almost sounds like what you're suggesting is, why don't we just have whitelists require you to be HRP? And I'm hesitant to lean into that explicitly, but I also like where you're going with this general idea of, um, if you're playing captain or head of security or nuki commander, you're a whitelisted role, or warden for that matter, you're a whitelisted role, and maybe we can expect more of you in terms of not just being good at roleplay and doing that roleplay, but encouraging it in others around you. But I agree with what Rosie said earlier in the chat here, which is kind of like this is a culture thing, and we can certainly encourage this and advocate such things and reward it with plus rep and so on. But the thing that we probably wouldn't be willing to do is explicitly make it a requirement for being whitelisted. And I think the reason why is because the kinds of things that you're suggesting, while awesome and ideal and absolutely useful in terms of like making extended more entertaining, uh, we are an MRP server, right? And so we don't want to demand something of the players that they didn't sign up for, right? They signed up for MRP, not HRP. If they want to be HRP characters, all the power to them. And I'm super down to make the game more suitable to that end. I know we've had a lot of folks complain about the hyper mega chaos of the game that we have right now. Even compared, granted we have less chaos than Wisden. Most MRP servers are gentler than we are. We're one of the most chaotic MRP servers right now. But is that all you had to say, Ray?
Yeah, I think I agree with. Oh my God, I think I can agree with your point a little bit. I mean, the extent of the RP I'm referring to is just generally, it's very important to understand that command or the whitelisted roles can just generally prevent a lot of rule breakings. This was in the statement. I think it's either in the screenshot or something I typed before. With their orders, they can possibly make the role play better if some antag decided to do some good role play. You get what I
Yeah.
mean?
To add that point, actually, we did discuss during during an admin meeting as well the use of more in-character punishments instead of just hard bans or just notes. Like if somebody is, say, breaking SOP as security, uh, having a watchdog report on them or similar things. Basically, having the crew, basically informing the crew that something, basically giving crew explicit permission to use their powers to enforce some sort of icy consequences onto something that somebody did. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. So I'm gonna. Oh, yep.
Yeah, one last thing before I leave. I'm just gonna abuse this chance and ask if it would be fine to put a Discord invite and a invitation to the security for good security officers role playing. Would that be fine?
Alex.
Oh, where would you want to put this invite?
In the forum discussion post and the sheet of paper that I would have in character to give in an in character thing recruitment. I posted it in the chat for the voice chat. Check it out.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's something you should put in character per se.
No, yeah. Yeah,
Hey,
actually,
Doug,
we can put it in let us promote you if you want.
Oh, I
It's
didn't know about that channel.
Yeah, it's got as like one ad on it right now.
Mhm.
If you send me a Discord message with what you want to put, with what what you want your post to look like, I will review it and just post it in its entirety over there.
It's fine now. I put the invite code.
Oh, okay.
All right, much appreciated. Thank you.
Of course.
See ya.
Thanks for your advice. Let me find the. Oh, that works too. Okay. Corundale, you're up.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
So I know we just had a pretty lengthy talk about role play. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit too.
Sure.
So I'll try to keep it kind of short because of that. We talked a little bit about power gaming and metagaming earlier,
Mhm.
and maybe this is just me. So you guys, I'm kind of curious what your side of everything thinks about it. But I'm thinking a lot about how the crew kind of arms itself super fast at the first sign of trouble. If
Mhm.
it happens every round, I just am curious if that's ever talked about internally or anything, or if that's something you guys think about.
So when the crew is responding to an active threat, right? Like nukies have been called, or someone hears a boom and, people yell Cindy's on the radio or something. Like, people preparing for danger, like generalized danger, I think is a reasonable reply to that. Like, if you're at your place of work, you're in a warehouse doing your Amazon warehouse worker shift, and you hear a fucking bomb go off, you're probably gonna grab a crowbar because you have no idea what the fuck just happened. All you know is you're spooked, right? Um,
Yeah,
I
I guess I'm
think.
thinking
Yep.
more about not so much like grabbing a crowbar, but like I swear cargo, every time there's a nuke round, like the table gets opened up, everybody hops the counter, and like everybody beats on the boxes for the laser guns, you know?
That has always been against the rules. They help it when you see it. If you're cargo and you're ordering without the advice of security or command, LO can't do it themselves because they have no authority over weapons. If you guys are ordering crates that you can't open and breaking them open, you better be able to point at the guy who's trying to kill you, right? Like, that's the level of threat that you need to be at to justify breaking open a laser box as a cargo tech. Same for LO, especially LO. Your command, you're held to a higher standard, and if we catch you doing that, you will get banned from command. That said, if you're like, yeah, no, zombies took over the station, yeah, that's an active threat. Totally, get those lasers, man. Right?
Yeah.
But
I
if it's,
definitely-
I don't know, I heard a boom somewhere, so I just grabbed lasers just in case. Remember, the definition of power gaming is preparing for a situation that hasn't actually happened yet. That boom could have just been salvage, right? Even if someone said Cindy's, that doesn't mean they're coming for you, cargo tech, right? So this has always been the policy. That's nothing new. That's a failure of players to implement the rules. So help if you see it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Do you have anything else?
That's all that I was thinking of. Thanks.
Sweet. All right. Mike.
Hello.
Hello.
So, I just came here to signal boost something that I think is kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like essentially what a lot of HRP and MRP is trying to control entropy in a way that is just not very feasible.
Mhm.
Because entropy as a concept, I think most people understand, but it's essentially the longer something goes on, the more unpredictable it gets. And
Yeah.
trying to, control chaos in a space station game is, it's a difficult thing to do,
Mhm.
but it's also like you can't separate the assistant from his robust toolbox because he will get mad. You can try, but he's still going to take his toolbox everywhere he goes. And it's more of a culture thing.
Yeah.
'Cause
This was something that we brought up as a whole. It's the culture of the game. Who are we to stop it? Sort of deal when we were having the admin discussion. What did we conclude with
So
that?
Mike is right that what we're dealing with is a difference of needs between certain demographic of the players and a different demographic of the players, right? Some players see MRP and they think, this is a place where I can go roleplay. Other players see MRP and they think, this is a place where valid hunting is against the rules, right? And both of those are true, but one is thinking the other isn't, right? And so my response to what you're saying, Mike, is less that you're wrong and more that for Delta V, that's not the culture we are supposed to have here, right? Like if you are coming here and insisting upon essentially like chaos for chaos's sake gameplay, that's what Wisden is for. We are not Wisden, right? We are not Space Station 13. We are Delta V, and Delta V is an MRP server. And so, if players are unable to adjust to that culture, then they're going to start running afoul of our rules. They're going to start running afoul of the expectations of the players around them. They're going to get blinked. They're going to be bored as tears because our gameplay is not designed to suit their needs, and that's kind of just the way it is. Because like we are advertising ourselves as this thing and you come here expecting something different, that to me is a you issue, right? That said, you are correct that like what MRP and HRP is probably like it can be described as like controlling entropy in a way that you ultimately can't do. And I also saw in the chat earlier, that might have even been you earlier, talking about how, yeah, welcome to Space Station, chaos is part of the game. Even one of our senior men's, Kurz, is of that opinion, and I certainly agree with them that is the game. That's the culture surrounding it. That's what everyone expects. When we see Space Station on Google Images, what's the first thing you see? You see Johnny Greytide with their robust toolbox, and the crowbar in the other hand. They got their insoles on. They got the gas mask. That is the iconic image of Space Station. And we're not trying to get rid of that. We're not trying to say that this is the wrong way to play Space Station, or even the wrong way to play Delta V. But what it does mean is that what we're aiming for is for Johnny Greytide to not be the default behavior of every single person in the game, right? We want the round to be able to go longer than an hour without something blowing up. We want the game to be able to be focused around roleplay more so than it is on an LRP server, and less so than it is on an HRP server, right? We do have antags. We want those antags to show up and cause a mess. We want security and engineering and so on to fix it. That's part of the fun of the game. That's why we are MRP and not HRP. But I also, like, this is a thing that I've been rankling against a lot myself, is like players get bored because there's no chaos happening, and my response to them is, so go roleplay. And they're like, oh, well, there's only so many things you can do. And it's like, my dude, I can freeform roleplay for hours and hours and hours, day after day after day, and have infinite content. You just have to get creative.
I've always said that. Oh, I've always said that if you're mentioning that, oh, there's nothing to do, I've done my job, then you make something to do. You create a new job. You go to some random guy and go, hey, do you wanna build like an aquarium or something? Just do something. You can do what you like. No one, we may be RRP, but we're not forcing you to only do your job. If your obligations are complete, you can make your own stuff. Make your own things to do.
Yes. And I've also, I have a potential solution for when it's like it's a survival round and there's nothing happening, and that's admin abuse. Yes, you've heard me, but no. On a serious note, just like if someone's doing something funny, there's nothing wrong with injecting a little bit of artificial chaos into it. Like I had an like everyone is going to yell at me for saying this, but I went and played Monkey Station and like picked Hermit, and there was a portal with a bunch of dragons spawning out of it, and I was like, fuck, what am I supposed to do? I thought I was having a problem, so the admin was like, here, take this C20, have fun. You're going to die anyways. And it's like game masters are just, without them it's, the experience is so much less than it can be. Admin abuse is such a core part of this game.
Yeah, and if you desire to experience admin abuse, what you do is you go to the CENTCOM station and then you start ERDMing and you will get admin abused. That's the policy we've decided is instead of banning you, we'll smite you. And it'll be all laughs. It'll be all laughs because like we don't want to admin abuse in the middle of the round. We'll do events. We'll do like roleplay events. We might even spawn an antag here and there. But like what we don't want to do is steal the player's thunder. So like if other people are role playing, we don't want to cancel their role play and replace it with our own, or make everyone distracted with the new guy in the funny green suit who showed up, But you're right. We can inject a little artificial chaos. I'm hesitant to take a non-antag round and turn it into an antag round because I think there's a reason why we have extended. If people voted for extended because that's the only way it's ever going to happen, then I don't want folks to be fucking with that, right? And that goes for both admins and players, right? Like for admins, they should not be taking advantage of their spawn perms to cancel an extended round and turned it into a survival apocalypse with a bunch of antags. And similarly, Tighter Joe, who isn't a Cindy, shouldn't respond to a boring round with, "Well, I guess I'll just blow some shit up," right? Like that would just be rule breaking, right? That's self-antagging. And so like I understand where you're coming from, and this is not an unpopular opinion that you have. This is like a really like 50% of our players feel this way, and the other 50% don't, and we're trying to balance both of those needs. But there is like a boundary for just how far away from that MRP boundary are we willing to go before we say that's not our job to like curate for that experience, right? And I think having a boring round is an opportunity for players to learn to go roleplay, go to the bar, go talk to people, use the text chat, right? That's the primary feature of the game. So one of the things that I really struggle with when I'm like trying to roleplay myself when I'm in the game is very often it feels like I'm facing a bunch of stonewall players. Their only purpose is to complete the mechanical job that they've been given, and then they're going to go SSD in the corner. And if I show up to their office and I request some mats, they'll interact with me. But if I start talking about like backstory stuff, or I start engaging with, I saw in their description they have some trigger or tick or something that I can, riff off of with my own character traits and so on. Very often they'll just kind of ignore me or give like a really closed response that's impossible to respond to. And that's something that's like we just have to kind of create a more inviting atmosphere so that players who are interested in that are feeling like they have a space in which to do it. And then it's not so difficult for those players who are maybe a little on the fence to just kind of hop in and slide into a roleplay headspace. And yeah, this is also MRP, not HRP. So we're going to have antags. We're going to keep, I was even thinking about implementing revolutionaries again, although the PR hasn't been finished. And so like there's all sorts of ways that we can include both sides of this story. And Kurz is one of our senior admins, and they are a strong advocate for that demographic that really prefers a more mechanics oriented approach with regard to roleplay versus mechanics in an MRP space, right? Kurz mentioned I am awake. Hell, I'll even throw you up here because you're relevant. Let me invite you to speak. But I'm all ears, Mike. If you had more to say.
Yeah, and this is your chance. I'm telling you right now. Vote for me for next GM application. I promise I will not give the clown super duper lube. Except I will.
Banned forever.
Where on earth is this invite to speak? But there it is. Jesus.
Anyways, I don't know how this button.
What? Huh?
Goodbye.
Why am I
goodbye.
here?
Oh god, it's
Did you not want to be? You could have just declined the invitation. Heck.
Yeah, but I saw a button and I had to click it.
Oh, okay. I brought you up here because Mike has been asking about stuff that is really like you and I, Kurz, are like the opposing staff members on this argument of which side of MRP are we leaning towards, right? I'm the one who wishes we were just an HRP server, and you're much more willing to tolerate a little bit of shenanigans than I am. So
Yeah, I'm just gonna quote something I've said before. I want the game to be a game that doesn't feel like a 9 to 5. Everyone's allowed some silliness, but not silliness that it ruins it for everyone else.
Yeah.
Which I feel we very much have been leaning into the closer to HRP, not exactly HRP, but we're like very much HRP plus, if you will, leaning towards the not fun side, if you will.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways in which folks who prefer a more chaotic gameplay style are feeling as if they're being a bit choked up by our standards, because our standards are definitely leaning towards MRP plus in terms of our policies and our rules and the way that we do things and so on. One of the things that we started doing and haven't really like created a clear intention behind is like we've stratified whose roleplay standards are what, right? Like we've made it so that command and security basically just need to be HRP, right? But that makes sense because those roles have so much influence over everybody else. Does Johnny Greytide or Clown McGee or fucking Jake from accounting need to be HRP? No, they really don't. And they're gonna want to have a little bit more chaos in order to make their round interesting. This is why, you know, a non-command, non-sec role could totally commit crimes. That's not rule breaking. What's rule breaking is when you self-antag, sure, but self-antag and crimes are not quite the same. You could
But that's
totally,
the thing. We've
yeah.
been pushing sort of admins intervening with what security should just be dealing
Yeah.
with. Because, okay, example. A long time ago, but is still pretty much has not changed.
Mhm.
Clown runs into security. All of security is unable to catch the clown. They've tried stunning him, shooting him with disablers, stuns. They're unable to get the clown out. They just be able to stun the clown, then they drag him out. And then the clown stands back up and then walks right back in.
Mhm.
And they do that 2 times, which that's pretty much, in my opinion, the role of the clown is either A, to be funny, or B, just sort of frustrate the crew. I say clown is like the funny role. Other people will probably find the clown kind of jiffying securities the whole stick around. I think that's funny. But because of that, the head of security helped us saying, hey, this clown won't leave security even though we've stunned him. Which I feel like you shouldn't even have to think to help that, just deal with the clown.
Yeah,
But
I
I feel
agree.
like, oh yeah, the clown, he's very LRP. He's not even role playing. He's just running back into security. Yeah, it's the clown. Go deal with it.
Yeah, I agree that like being LRP, right? Like LRP roleplay is not actually against our rules. If you're a silent clown who never says a damn word, you don't emote or anything, you're just annoying as fuck. Like short of self-antagging, you're allowed to do that as a clown. Only second commander held to a higher roleplay standard. And that higher roleplay standard is like MRP plus, especially for whitelisted roles, right? But for everyone else, for Joe Greytider, for Clown McGee, for Jake from accounting, those characters don't need to be super high roleplay. They have the rules that we have in terms of implementing MRP as policy that guide them. But they can break laws. They can be annoying. They can choose not to interact with anyone else. I mean, even command technically can do that, right? And that's okay, right? So I definitely agree, certainly in this case, right? That's an IC issue. If a clown is being annoying and Sec is just tired of dealing with their shit, yeah, cuff them and put them in the brig. Escalation works too. You can perma them. If they keep escaping, you can trial them for repeated violation of custody, which is eventually a thing that you can sentence them to a capital offense for and execute them or move them around. That's an IC issue. So we still have Chad who wanted to do another question, so we'll invite them up to speak.
What the?
Hello.
Howdy. Howdy. Um, I'm Ted Osman, or you call, or some other comedy goofball that drinks too much. Don't care. So, I like a lot of the RP aspect, like you playing with other people and somebody else. For example, HRP is like too exaggerated RP for my standard. Delta V has the standards that I like. Decent RP, a bit of, well, the wisdom magic. You know what I mean? You know? So, character is like war veteran. That's so like half of my characters are just, well, the personality of them are just pretty much like bits and pieces of stereotypes. Like like for example, the one of my mains, I just use them a lot. For example, I like doing a lot of the RPS. For example, like role playing with the lawyer when I'm a prisoner, and being sentenced the only security member that does their job. There's just some problems with Delta V's role playing. It's like, well, people constantly just do stupid things, and I just do whatever I do. For example, if I play as a lawyer, I try to do a court case, and there you go. Somebody is just reflecting in the middle of something important. Sorry about that. Music is just neighbors.
Sorry, Chad. I am having a really hard time understanding your words because of the mic quality. I actually am not hearing music. I'm hearing just like the cutting in and out. Can you summarize what your concern is in like a sentence or two?
Well, the only sentence I have is just I just want Delta V to have, well, more character development and a lot of better things.
Okay. So character development is a good key point. Rosie, of course, says be the example that you wish to see. But we also need to consider that a lot of people aren't doing this, and I think it's worth talking about. So, our previous policy, and I think it's still our current policy, is largely that there is a total like mind wipe between each round in terms of like knowledge, and this is basically necessary, right? But it does kind of create the impression that there's no inter-round like anything, and so character progression or having a story from shift to shift isn't really a thing that characters are given the space to do. Um, I think Alex brought this up, but one of the ways that we sought to kind of move towards giving some kind of inter-round thing is by creating this like in-character inter-round accountability system, and it would only be reserved for non-rule breaking offenses. Like if it was the kind of thing that warranted being demoted or sued in court or something, maybe this could be something where we have an event where a CENTCOM lawyer shows up and dresses you down formally in writing and everything. It sets you down, goes through some questions about what happened, and just kind of formally reprimands you as like an HR rep. Just like, hey, yeah, you shouldn't have done that 3 shifts ago. And like things like that can be one example of how we do that. I have a friend of mine who I've been playing. Sorry?
Well, one of my ideas is like character development, like proper character development. It's
Yeah.
like, well, having like a full record system. For example, you can add like how tall the character is, how the weight, and many characteristics like small details, personality, and reason of employment. How one of my characters is a worker. I like to have like some sort of like trait that makes more like realistic than my characters like trauma and past and other things. Because
So
that's
yeah,
one of the main things of my characters. Just well, he has seen through a lot of horrible things. He just wants to forget it, and he can't. So I prefer like adding like a trait of like PTSD or something to like make my character like react to the conflict he has been in his eternal stage of trying to forget it.
yeah. So I hear 2 specific suggestions that are coming out of that. The first is it sounds like one of the things they're requesting is basically a crew record system, medical records, employment records, security records, all that stuff. Um, One of the HRP servers I've played on recently has just those. They're already in the game. The consoles work, all that shit. And like that is something that we could just go over and seek their permission just to cherry pick that shit over and have it on our server. And I think that that would be an improvement with 0 loss. That said, we would need to actually implement that at the developer level, and right now all we have are admins. So we'll have to talk to PUG about how we make that happen. The second suggestion that I might point out is like you're talking about getting a mechanic so that you can have this, for instance, a PTSD trait. And I propose to you that this is something that you ought to be able to role play out. Like I honestly think we have an excess of accents, and we should just role play the accents, right? But that's just an opinion thing. But with regards to like various signs of trauma and so on, that's something that's really specific to your character, and the way you do it is going to be different from how someone else does it. And I think that's part of the joy of it. Alex, you had some opinions to share?
Oh, I wanted to make a clarification earlier on the mind wipe between rounds thing. That's not actually what the rule states for meta grudging. The meta gaming guidelines, meta grudging here being important, specifically says you are allowed to have knowledge of previous experiences with someone else in prior shifts, but this does not give you permission to hold a grudge against someone that results in you treating them differently in an unfair way. And similarly, you also can't use this for you also can't use interactions with previous shifts to give somebody special accesses that you wouldn't otherwise give somebody else. So the mind wipe thing doesn't actually happen. And I've seen people I've seen people actually specifically discuss going into the next discuss going into the next shift in the same department to keep a conversation going or just to be together for the next shift if they liked each other. Stuff like that. So I just wanted to clarify that the mind wipe thing between rounds isn't actually a thing in the rules, and even if it was, the culture so far just seems to. Actually, I think that's it. The culture, if it was in the rules, the culture ignores it, but it's not in the rules, so it doesn't matter. It's just specifically to giving gameplay advantages or disadvantages. That's the issue.
Yeah. That is definitely my understanding as well. The thing I was saying was more in the context of like new life rules are perhaps a little bit stricter than we actually enforce them, and that's okay. It's important that we understand the purpose of them, right? And we could be more specific, but we don't usually have issues with that. I'm not super worried about people's role play. Like I don't really care as long as they're not like revealing a Cindy's entire plot or something like that. Anyhow, Chad, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, it's like something like really important. So how I like, how when I say I like it, I really like the RP. For example, when I try doing an RP as sec, constantly my coworkers just fuck it. It just ruins it. For example, like trying to just entice me to do something dumb, then just doing more dumb things. For example, like a shift I knew, like in my special RP, drinking while working it's just horrible. And I did it.
Sorry, I'm afraid I didn't understand most of that, Chad. I apologize.
Well, can I say it in a special way for you? Yeah, if you don't understand my weird ass Scottish accent.
It's not the
So,
accent, it's the mic. Sorry.
well, the main thing is, well, for example, I know my RP is like in HRP extra plus mode, but well, I like doing like, for example, I know I recognize empathy in other things. For example, if I see someone in close to grid and is wanted, I just leave them close, just try and help them instead of doing the average thing a sec is just finishing them off. For example, if they're Yankees, I just RP with them just to keep them alive, but thinking that making them like family.
Yeah. I do suggest that you take to text and express your concerns there. We got other folks I want to get to, but I'll make sure that I read up and respond to what you have to say, Chad. Thank you for sharing.
No problem, mate. No problem. if you if you want me some ideas, just speak to me in prep, and I have a lot of them.
All right. Legs. Hello.
Hello, how are
Hello.
you?
I'm good.
So, I am fairly new to the game. I was just curious if you guys are going to be adding any more races. Because I know I'll go to other servers and I'll see things like dwarf or like there was like a weird mech race that I saw. I know this would be more like development type thing, but I was wondering if you guys had any information on that, or if you're gonna add any more traits, like any physical traits in. I don't have any examples of that, but I'm just curious if you have any development in that.
Yeah, Noel's right. Pugy is the person to ask for that because none of us are developers and we have no idea what's going on there. So.
Okay, cool. I was just curious. That was my main question.
Yeah. Right. Was that all you had to say?
Yeah.
Cool. Then VM's up next.
All right. Hello. How's it going?
Hello.
Hello.
I know you said no development questions this meeting, but this is kind of adjacent to development questions. So yeah, I wanted to actually arrange a meeting to discuss things about this, and I've reached out to a couple people and never actually got anything back. And so I suppose that'll be me asking this here as well.
Yeah. Pugy has been really firm that we need to not be doing development talk of any kind here right now. So we can't really do that for you. We're all just admins, and that's all we can do is talk about admin stuff. That said, if you're having difficulty reaching out to Pugy, you can certainly DM some of the other heads and see if we can help get her attention. And we can see what we can do there.
Now, another thing, because a lot of people were asking about things that I was that I had in the past been coding, but like, so I've seen a couple things in other Discords, never actually being brought up on the EE Discord, of concerns about this that weren't ever actually brought up to me, and I get them periodically, and I'm trying to address them, but I would very much like to be in talks with people, actually people here. But yeah, I'll try and reach out, I guess, to your headman, Alex, some more people at DMs, but yeah, that's more development side of things.
Yeah, I hear the frustration. I mean, we've had our own difficulties in communication and such lately we've been working through, so there's definitely a lot of empathy there. So we'll do what we can to help you out to make sure that you get in contact with the folks who can actually answer that question for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, was that all?
Yeah, that'll be it.
All right.
Actually, so what was this again? Yeah, that'll be it.
Okay. In that case, Ryan is up.
Wow, is that the Ryan Rost, space lawyer?
Yes, it is. Hello. During my role plays, often whenever I'm taking hostages, I see people just acting like, oh, it doesn't really matter. They can always be cloned, and it tends to affect the quality of role plays. How do you plan to resolve that?
That's a really good question, because it kind of forces us to tango with the like, how much roleplay are you required to do, right? Are you required to be seriously concerned for the life of this person who can totally just get cloned, right? And I think, we can talk about this specific scenario of a hostage situation. Like medical has an obligation to render care, security has an obligation to make some sort of attempt at protecting this person's life, right? But I think this maybe has a broader implication than this particular scenario really draws out. So maybe you have another question along these lines that will better express really what we're getting at here.
Really, what I think has been going on recently is just people have been starting to care less for their characters' lives, knowing that there's no real risk of being permanently dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's starting to affect some roleplay in some degree, since people are starting to act how your character wouldn't. For example, people wouldn't really run towards threats. Instead, they would really be just running away from it because they know they'll be saved eventually, or they have no regard for their character's life.
Yeah, that's something, granted, of course, this is probably a way in which Kurz and I have differing opinions. But, like, the way I think of these kinds of things is that, if you see a Nuki in Blood Red and you are not already at the state of, like, it's fight or die, right? Fight or die is a legitimate circumstance that you might find yourself in. But, like, you shouldn't be running towards the Nukis with a spear thinking you're going to beat this guy with a fucking saw. No, that dude's going to cut down 50 Titers before you land a single hit on him, right? Even though in practice it's not actually that cut and dry, because Cindy's do tend to, Titers do tend to be able to robust Nukis rather reliably even. But, like, why is every single person on the station a goddamn hero? You're not all Rambo, right? So it's something where, like, it's hard to address that, because I don't feel like we as administrators really should force a player to behave other than their character identity, except where it violates some kind of rule, right? And so you could argue it's power gaming, perhaps. Our current definition doesn't really address this scenario, so it might be worth creating a B section for power gaming or something in our future rules. Honestly, this is something that I feel like is difficult to address. I don't feel like this is something we can do with policy. I think we can only do via advocating for a more roleplay focused approach. I agree with you that, for instance, if Nukis are trying to do some sort of RP based Nuki round instead of just giving everyone on site, that's a good thing. And then Sec shooting first and asking questions later, and every Titer on the station suddenly becoming Rambo is, gonna make that really hard to actually perform. And suddenly Nukis are just forced to be an MRD antag. Like they don't have the means to do otherwise, and that's not good. That's not MRP. That's kind of why we've been eyeing Nukis as, like, they might be next on the chopping block after Ret King if we can't find a suitable replacement for them or somehow improve their roleplay, right? Because right now Nukis are just not good enough for MRP. They're just not. They're not fun. It's just a team deathmatch, and that's not what this game is about.
So, in some ways, I think we can improve Nukis. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't want to start a whole discussion here, but as Fireheart said, I am an advocate for fun. Not that Fireheart isn't, by the way. Fireheart's idea of fun and my idea of fun is completely different. I feel like if we didn't have Nukis, security wouldn't use half the shit that they have. Because then security would only use disablers and stun sticks. Nukis have in the past done good roleplay.
Yeah.
I've heard about it, I've seen it, and it's great. If we remove Nukis, that's also going to probably remove half of the shit that security has. Like, I've only ever seen the RPG come out when somebody's about to get banned and they're breaking the rules, or as a latch-dish effort by security to try to nuke some Nukis,
Yeah, and you're absolutely right.
I feel like Nukis should stay, but how the crew reacts needs to be more monitored. For example, like how you said, some John Grey Titer with a spear. If the Nukis are just gunning everybody down, which I'll be frank, Nukis normally gun down innocent people regardless because they don't know who's just going to suddenly feel like being a hero. That's probably why they just gun down everyone. But if the Nukis are just shooting everyone and you have a spear, I don't see an issue with being like, fuck it, me doing this is probably going to save some other people, and then throwing a spear at them or running at them, because I don't see any issue with that. As long as it's not like the Nukis are role-playing, and you're like, oh, I don't want to fucking role-play, I want to shoot and blow up stuff, and then you start attacking them, then yeah, I'd say that's not fun for anyone involved. But if the Nukis are going on the warpath, I don't see any issue whatsoever with being like, I got a spear, I am in the mood to fight, I'm going to go fight the Nukis until I die. I don't see an issue with that. Put up a grand last fight, because at the end of the day, it's either you die fighting Nukis, or the Nukis win, and everyone dies to a nuke anyway.
Yeah, I certainly don't disagree that is the ideal, that we get to keep Nukis or something very similar to Nukis, and we simply have a higher roleplay, actual roleplay standards that exist in the game, players doing it. that is hard to get, is the thing, right? And we have not formed a consensus on whether Nukies are going to stay or they're going to go. We have very strong opinions for both answers, and it's sorry. It's something that's going to take a lot more work than simply deciding one way or the other. And to address Ryan's need, like, we are talking about guiding how players roleplay in a way that goes beyond. I see that Starts the Heart is trying to address me, so I'll get to that in a moment. I don't understand which policies would actually create a situation such that we had, for instance, a more interesting Nuki round standard, a more interesting engagement with RPN tags. Just I think today or yesterday, I saw some folks having a really hard time grasping with the idea that the ninja isn't required to go on a team deathmatch just because they completed their objectives, right? They green texted. They did everything except bomb the station. They were allowed as a trade offer to hack the server, and then the trade was don't bomb the station. And they decided, I'm okay with getting 2 out of 3 objectives. And like, yeah, that's diplomacy. That's roleplay. Please do more of that. And if the ninja wants to go hang out in the court afterward and just watch an Ifrit rather, and the warden duke it out in a legal battle, then yeah, go ham, dude. You green texted, you're fine. So I want to see more of that. Let me scroll up for a moment and see, because Chris is trying to explain probably an answer to this question here. Okay, so I think I found the top here. So Chris says, if your character identity is Rambo on a space station, that's kind of silly. Isn't it MRP? I have seen servers do this with policy. SS13 servers tend to do this fairly often. They say, act like a normal person is very often a rule. Define a skill set for your characters is also often a rule. I will interject and caveat that sounds like an HRP habit. I've seen that a lot on HRP servers. I've not seen that so much on MRP or LRP. But we have talked about that. Continuing to read from them, they say, we can't handle this with policy mostly speaks to not being fairly familiar with PlayStation 13 to me, in the nicest way possible, admittedly, but it's just incorrect. And you're absolutely right. I do not have experience personally with Space Station 13, except in the slightest sense. My experience is Delta V and essentially only Delta V. I've been here for 2 years, and before that, I have tried Space Station 13, and that's the extent of my experience. Chris says, I sure did, and the admins forced me to stop doing roleplay, and that's something that I would like to make sure doesn't happen again, generally speaking. I don't know about the specifics of that situation. It's a hard limit. I don't know what you mean. Don't use medical supplies to treat injuries like a doctor when you're a janitor is actively something you can enforce. And you're right. We did last admin meeting talk about a stay in your lane rule. And personally, I like the idea of a stay in your lane rule. And again, from my perspective, that feels like a straight up HRP type of thing to enforce. It also does create a lot of complicated situations. Like if medical is having a mass cash situation and there's 4 people who are about to get round removed because there's only 1 doctor handling it, is it unfair for the janitor to show up and offer first aid help? I feel like that's okay in MRP. It's not my favorite, but I've done it too, and I feel like players shouldn't be punished for doing it. But I can see how that can move us in the right direction. I've seen it enforced. You're right. That's totally a thing. This is a Delta V refuses to moderate people type of thing. Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, Chris, that what this is really digging into is how much are we willing to moderate? How much are we willing to say belongs to admin discretion versus player discretion? And it's a big question. It's worth talking about, but it's a very big question. Let me see, because I've been scrolled way up. So Evan suggests, what if admins took a little bit more of a CENTCOM role, but for Cindy's or traders and such, where like we help them by poking them with our special events that are specifically guiding or assisting them in some way that's improving roleplay somehow. Ryan, you had something?
Yeah, on what you just said, I think that's a great idea because recently recently a few rounds ago when I was playing on Nuki rounds, we had this idea to try and disguise ourselves as Central Command inspectors, and I believe it was Lazzy who played the role as a Central Command intern. We tried to get them to send us a fax that was stamped for a pizza delivery, so we could forge Central Command documents and successfully disguise ourselves as inspectors. Obviously, it didn't turn out to be successful, but it was an amazing experience, I believe, for the crew and for the fellow Nukis. So I would promote the idea of admins partaking as Syndicate High Command or something like that.
I have at times taken control of the blood red phone in the Nuki's base to say, "Hey, this is Commodore Mason of Syndicate High Command. We know you're here to blow up the station, but I need you to go steal something while you're there. Just as an extra interaction, extra bit of thing." There is yet to be a Nuki team to successfully steal the rubber duck, though. No one's done it yet.
Okay.
No matter how many Nuki teams I've told. But Nukis are free to use the blood red phone or fax Syndicate High Command for something. I mean, now that with the retooling of the event guidelines, sure, I can imagine a few admins probably being a bit more willing, I suppose, to do that.
Yeah. We had a couple of folks, VM and Chris in particular, it sounds like, were expressing that they do not perceive a stay in your lane type of rule as a HRP thing. And I'm curious then, like, maybe I can run some. I really wish we just had polls over on the server. We haven't gotten the alpha beta tested yet.
If I may?
Yep.
Paradise, SS13, MRP server, they do have a thing where it's saying it's perfectly fine for your engineer character to know a bit of medical and to know a bit of science, but what they emphasize is you as a character shouldn't know everything. It's fine to have a diverse skill set, but you shouldn't be a breathing omni tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like to be clear, if I was making my own server from scratch and I didn't really give a shit what anyone else thought, it would totally have a stay in your lane rule. Like I really like the idea of it. The reality though is that I'm dealing with more than just my opinions, right? But if there's like a general community consensus that a stay in your lane rule is chill, then we could just do that. The admins were already talking about it yesterday. Like it's not alien to us. That probably would require like actually running a poll though, because there's a lot of people and most of them aren't here. So yeah. Ryan, do you feel like we've answered your concerns?
Yeah, you have. I believe that's all for now.
All right. We are an hour and a half into this this meeting. Here, let me read this thing I just got pinged for.
That thing I pinged you for is outdated now. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Chad. I do need to decline your request because I literally do not know what you're saying. Please type it in text so that I can respond to it more effectively. So we didn't quite have a skill system, but I believe back when we had CPR still, and I really wish we had CPR back, but when you code it, like only doctors could safely perform CPR. And I really liked that. It felt cool and rewarding. I would love to have that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, we aren't developers, so that's not much there's not much we can do about that. This is a good question for single character users. So like talking about knowing everything, what if I was only so Loose Goose, like even if we had a stay in your lane rule, it would only be applicable for the shift, right? So if your character is a medic, for the duration of this shift, their primary skill set should be medical. And if you spin them up as a epistemics, scientist next round, then their primary skill set should be science. Like that's the only way a stay in your lane rule really makes sense. I don't think it is reasonable to ask players to have characters who are only allowed to play one of two roles. Like that's, I think that's really really out of scope for MRP. Yeah, half the goddamn Earth is CPR certified. Like it's not that hard. Let's see. I think we might have reached the end of Q&A. I know, Chad, you've got your hand up, but like I said, I need you to type your concerns because I can't understand your voice through the microphone. Do we have any other folks who wanted to share some questions or concerns? Gun mods, or having some type of character development system that is more detailed in other things. Yeah, like if you're asking about game mechanics, like new features and such, you're barking up the wrong tree. We have no power over that here, so.
Engineering needs more things that are proactive and not just reactive. I don't feel like we can really do anything about that.
That's a when you code it, a certified when you code it moment.
Yeah, I just don't like to say that because it's very dismissive of what they say. It's like it's very true. There's nothing we can do about it. Like someone who with more coding experience would need to do something about that. If you want to learn it, that would be great.
This is just a matter of.
But it's just like none of us here can really do anything about that.
We're just administrators. I can't get at all. I mean, I know like the bare minimum. That's it. We're just the administration team. We don't, is Nuki getting officially? No, at this very second, we're not removing Nuki.
I will fight tooth and nail for Nukis.
Yeah, we have not even like done a poll to see what the admin team's opinions are. It's a thing that we talked about one time in a meeting like 2 months ago, and that's the last time we talked about it as a team.
Are Revs coming back? Probably.
Yeah. Revs, I already have a PR that has them fully functioning, and I've even tweaked them a little bit to be a little bit more MRP friendly. We need to go through and work through that design as a team before we can actually make it a thing. But they're not far off. Donut has their hands up, so I'm gonna give them a chance to speak. Hello, Donut. I'm afraid we cannot hear you, Donut. Why don't we put you back on the queue, and hopefully you can figure out your technical issues when we get back to you. I'm going to move you back into the audience for now. Feel free to raise your hand again. Chad, I see you got your hand up again. Did you want to type in what it is that you've got on your mind? It's not your accent, dear. It's entirely the quality of your microphone, and there's not much we can do about that. I am reading though, so if you type, I can.
Yeah, I can understand your accent. It's just that your microphone isn't 144p. It's very hard to decipher what you're saying through that.
What if we talk about ERT? I mean, if you have a question about ERT, now's the time to ask. I will answer the ERT questions, right? Considering I was the one. One of the main problems with the ERT is primarily the use or the expectation that people have coming over from Wisden, because I've seen Wisden, they hand out ERT like candy over there. ERT is very much a hey, oh no, Nukis are winning. Let's make the game even more of a deathmatch or even more difficult for the ERT shouldn't be something to just automatically get sent whenever the Nukis start to quote win. ERT should be there I think what we came with ERT on Delta is somebody who you call when you have to abandon ship, when you have to come over, and the ERT is pretty much only going to be there to make sure you can safely abandon ship. That is pretty much how ERT is gonna work. If you're calling for ERT, you've accepted the situation is so bad that Central Command themselves are going to force you to leave. Because otherwise the problem with ERT is you're just sending 5 very well armored and very well armed guys to prolong the deathmatch, which isn't really what we want. And God forbid an antagonist robust an ERT member and suddenly has all access and an all access
And a ton of
headset,
gear
ton of
and
gear
stuff that you can't normally get.
Yeah, no. We are having ERT, but more as a end of the round condition only.
It's more
Yeah.
shuttle support than come fix the station.
Yeah, they are delivered via the evac shuttle now, which means they show up and the round is over, right? Like you are calling ERT because the round is over. It's just a way to maybe create a bit more opportunity for ghost role players. It gives a little bit more role play associated with the evac shuttle itself. It gives the command a little bit more role play opportunities with the admins and so on. But what ERT should not be doing is just now becoming a part of the crew for the next hour with AA, right? Evan has their hands up, so I'm going to pull them in.
Good afternoon, gents. Sorry for the horrible mic quality. I am on Bluetooth at this moment.
All right.
Oh God.
How exactly are you guys planning to deal with syndicates? Like we touched upon this earlier today. I wanted to know exactly how exactly are you guys going to be looking at syndicates and how they treat their objectives based on their discretion of how they use their items and the destruction of areas around them to proceed to accomplish their goals as well as their buddies' goals. How exactly are you guys going to enforce your rules in that regard without having to impede upon what their perceived plan is supposed to be?
Yeah, so this was something that we talked about earlier, and I'm glad you asked it because there are some clarifications that could be made, and Kurz is also present to advocate for the opposing viewpoint as well. But we did form an 80% consensus in the admin team that antags need to be approaching their objectives as their primary goals, and if they want something other than their objectives, they need to talk to us and A-helps first, right? So like being a Cindy is not a license to just blow random shit up, right? As for the definition of like too much damage, that is where it gets a lot more complicated, right? Like if you say I'm gonna blow up this area as a distraction, well, now we're in the gray area. Now we have no idea because, well, that is in pursuit of your objectives technically. How much of a distraction is too much? That's woof. That's hard to answer.
I think it's going to be based on a case by case basis, based off of like the method of which the distraction is made and why and the reasoning as to why it happens. I'm assuming we'd have to talk about it before we commit said actions, just to have the go ahead.
If you're doing something that is like I'm not pursuing my objectives, I am straight up doing something else. I'm doing some sort of antag RP. The most effective way to do that is to help us so that we can make sure to check that. Because while you may well be a solid, well-known HRP Cindy, Joe Greytider, who's rolled up Cindy for the first time and thinks that blowing random shit up is their job, doesn't have that expectation, and so we need to be able to check that, right?
Okay.
So one of the things that I talked about earlier in the meeting was, for instance, we had a Skelebro who requested some, advice on how far can they go, and we negotiated what a really cool like antag thing they could do is, because currently skeletons can literally just MRDM. They're allowed, even though we don't want them to, right? And there was another case where I had a Cindy who had completed all their objectives, and they're like, give me some more. Make me suffer. And I'm like, all right, let me look around the current status of the station and find something interesting for you to do. So I'm like, all right, somebody has notified the syndicate that they are sick and tired of these fucking carp mounted everywhere on Submarine's bridge. Get rid of them. And then also they want you to deliver them a Ripley from Logi. So you need to steal it and bring it to the shuttle without someone cuffing you or something. and they green texted. They got all of the actual objectives that they were given by the game, and they green texted on the A-Help objectives. And they probably
the badass Cindy Lord.
Yeah, that was a badass Cindy Lord.
If you ever get me on the other end of the A-Help and you ask for an actual objective, I am going to make you break into the captain's bathroom, and you are going to steal that rubber duck. Failure is not an option.
See, that kind of stuff is perfect. It's stuff that gives both difficult yet not like station ending type objectives for Cindy's are almost crucial to play those roles. It makes it way more enjoyable for not only the crew but for the antagonists as well. It makes the rounds a lot more fun.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned earlier about the central command type role for syndicates as well, as that would genuinely, it would help kind of alleviate this whole issue with A-helping instead, rather than they can call their own command for their guidelines and what they can or cannot do within their objectives. It would make it a lot more simple with rules, as well as it would make guidelines and their rules of engagement, for lack of a better term, way more clear.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it could also make Listening Post something mechanically useful other than just being an RP role. Since they are, are Listening Outpost operatives currently whitelisted?
Nope.
They're not?
Not
Okay.
anymore. They're just time gated now.
Noted. It could be, I believe someone earlier was suggesting this idea of making use of whitelisted roles as a way to kind of push harder on improving everyone's roleplay, not just their own. Maybe we could make the Listening Post agents whitelisted, and they could be tasked with giving them additional objectives and such, and they're held accountable if their objectives suck, right? Like if they just say go murder the whole crew, then they get de-whitelisted, right? But
exactly, it would be more of a game roleplay role.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and that's worth taking a note on. VM contends not whitelisted, but Sierra was talking with me earlier about making Sierra's custom admin event with the Listening Post into its own standalone round type. Can you elaborate on what that actually was, VM?
I believe he died.
To answer your question earlier, sorry?
I've completed my question stuff, I'm just going to step down.
Cool.
Thank you.
To answer your earlier question, Chris, about the Syndicate bomb and such, that's a very contentious issue in the admin team, but one of the conclusions that we did come to is that just because it's in your uplink does not mean that you're entitled to use it. And the reason why that is because this game was created by an LRP server, and we are not that server. So we are able to have differences, but the lack of having differentiated is not necessarily an endorsement. You still have to follow the rules, even if the game technically lets you break the rules, right? Yeah, VM, that's definitely worth talking about at some point and figuring out how we could implement that. That would of course require PUG to field that, but that sounds like the kind of thing that I'd like to have that. And we can certainly do it as an admin extended round event or something. That can be we've been talking about having standardized events, which would be an event template that we've already kind of nailed down as a team and approved, so that admins can just kind of throw it into the round without really have to worry about if it's too much or something like that. And this could probably be something like that. To be clear, even under the nanotracing rules from 2 years ago, way back in 2021, 22 rather, we had the rules that Syndicate needed to have damage proportional to and in service of their objectives. So I'm not sure that the admins were fine with it, and if they were allowing it, it might have been a badman, because the reality is that has always been against the rules to just blow up random shit. It's never been allowed.
But they raised that, didn't they? I remember after that, after a bit, they're like, okay, we're going to ease up on antags. You're sort of a free agent. That was a rule, but then it was lifted, I believe.
It is their current rules, and it was the rules 2 years ago. If they lifted it, they put it back. Like in the code base, right? The Nanotracing code base, which is where we originally came from before we were called Delta V. They had they had that for most of the last 2 years of their existence. So or the last year of their existence rather. So but that's beside the point, because we are a different server and we might make different decisions. And Kurz, of course, you're an advocate for letting up a little bit on that kind of thing. And Chris, I hear you too, that, well, if it's there, we should be able to use it. And I agree that something like an explosive shouldn't be completely banned from use. The Syndicate bomb is not the thing that you cannot use. It's just that we're trying to think, when can you really justify it is a question worth asking. So if you're going to whip out this thing that can erase an entire department, you need to be able to answer the question, is this proportional to your objectives, and how does it help you get them, right? And if the answer is, it's a distraction so I can steal the CE's boots, then I'm going to be giving you a cross-armed look, and I'm going to be like, did you really need to nuke the entirety of the service department just to get the CE's boots, right? Like, was that really proportional?
Yes, but what objective do we have that is proportional to ever using it?
And I would argue that the problem there is that Wisden created the Syndicate bomb, and we don't need it.
But didn't we also say that if we got rid of it, the whole point of the decoy bomb would be mute, which is a great RP piece?
I do agree on that. And like I said, this is one of those things that's still in the up in the air. We don't have a consensus on this, and you're hearing that, you know, me and Kurz have different views on what exactly Cindy should be allowed to do and not be allowed to do, and it's going to take us time to come to a consensus on what actually the rules should be. Yeah, I'm reading Evan. Yeah, we definitely did realize that the Syndicate bomb is like wildly overpowered if you consider its TC cost. It's like 11 TC, and you can't even, like, I think there was an item that's like a sniper rifle or some shit that's like 14 TC, and you have to empty both of the magazines that are given to you in order to kill the captain in their carapace. And it's like, it's a slow firing rifle, and it's very loud and obvious. But the Syndicate bomb is like cheaper and way deadlier and way more effective, and it's wild.
I'm pretty. If I recall, it's we did say that the biggest issue was the fact that you can get it within the first 30 minutes, because within the first 30 minutes, it's like, okay, if they blow up someplace important, like for example the bridge or all of engineering, I agree, yeah, maybe we should boink and say, hey, why did you blow up this essential part of the station? But as we've had in the past, if they just place it in the middle and they blow up, I don't know, the kitchen and some bar that can be rebuilt and won't be the end of the station, I'd say that's fair. But the thing is, the station needs to have enough time. Sorry, I'm really jumped up on caffeine right now. The station needs to have existed long enough to have the resources to have realistically be able to rebuild it, especially after the Fire Axe change that I believe we were talking about. So instead of removing the Syndicate bomb, just make people be wary of where they plant it, and then just increase the timer a slight bit more to give the station some chance of getting minerals. Because let's be real, if salvage by like 50 minutes in hasn't gotten enough room to really just rebuild one big area's floor, I'd say that's more of
that's a skill
bad
issue.
look on the salvage than the whole Syndicate being bad. That's just the Syndicate taking advantage of the fact that Apartment's not doing their fucking job at that
Pretty
point.
much. Yeah, and I'm in agreement with that in principle. Kerr's touched on this, but I do want to clarify. We did address one of the specific ways in which the Syndicate Bomb in particular is like a pain in the ass, because there was a change some while ago with the Fire Axe. Wisden, I believe, had determined that Nukies were abusing the Fire Axe to space the entire station by tearing up the floors, and so removed the Fire Axe's ability to do so. And when we talked about this as an admin team, we were like, but they can do it anyways with China Lakes and crowbars in a no power situation. They can just like beat open windows everywhere they go. Like, it's so trivial to space the station when you're a Nuki. I don't think you even need the Fire Axe to pull that off. And nerfing the Fire Axe, I don't think really made Nukis any less powerful at all.
Yeah, I even
So,
said it's
yeah.
not. Yeah, and Nukies, the people who don't have access to explosives that could just rip holes into space. The Fire Axe is the issue.
Yeah, and like having a Fire Axe being able to tear up the floor is what makes fixing a bomb like relatively easy. Whereas if you take away that ability, then suddenly you have to use RCD ammo, and it takes time, and it's like uh, it becomes a pain in the ass. What's up, Lauren?
Real quick, I'm gonna have to leave for about 20 minutes. I just want to thank everyone for attending. I will hopefully see you all next month.
Yeah. We probably are about to wrap up in about 12 minutes here, so let me see. I know I saw Chad had been raising their hand, but I hadn't seen them post any messages in chat here. Did you miss something important? No, just eventually we'll update our rules, and it'll be something worth making sure you pay attention to, because there's gonna be a lot of changes. Nothing I think that is gonna be too contentious, because we have a lot of focus on consensus with this particular team. So hopefully, like, Kurz here is very much someone who I often disagree with, and I have made a point to make sure that they get a vote in everything, because I don't want to be pushing something that half the server is going to throw a tantrum about, honestly. So, Hager says, given we're MRP, I always struggle with how much folks made a mad dash for evac at round end to the point of leaving behind SSD crew members. Have you guys had any thoughts about incentivizing not abandoning folks like that? It's hugely immersion breaking to me. Yeah, I mean, I used to be the CMO who says, don't you dare let me catch you walking past an SSD person with empty hands, right? And I think that's something that a lot of folks like role playing, and certainly I encourage folks to do that kind of stuff. It does take it does take too little time to really, I think, justify enforcing that. And with the cryopods, I think it is less of a severe issue than it used to be, because a lot of those SSD players are instead in cryopods. I know there was a thread a month or two ago where someone was strongly advocating for forcing people to go to cryo as a rule instead of SSDing in the middle of the halls or something like that. And I'm definitely opposed to that. But like, immersion breaking is not necessarily rule breaking, right? Like, it being maybe not the most cool role play, that's okay. I think people are allowed to not be super mega focused on roleplay if that's not their jam. We cannot talk about rebasing to EE right now. That's straight up a developer issue. We don't have any power over that.
Yeah, that's all development. We just are here to talk about just server stuff.
You would have to talk to Pugy. We do not currently have a head maintainer, and so Pugy is the only person who has the authority to make decisions about that. Okay. So I think it is time for us to call the meeting to a close since we have no more questions. I hope all of you have a good rest of the day. Thank you for making it. Bye-bye.
Left.